Sumya Ojakli, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I've been looking around for experts in NFTs, and so I've looked I've looked at a lot of profiles, and I've been looking not for folks who are like rara, NFTs are forget about everything in history. NFTs is it? That's it, right? And I've encountered a lot of those, and so I avoided those, and so I've been looking for level-headed folks who uh, who know enough to educate us, but also are not going to mislead us. Whether I'm not saying that those folks are misleading folks intentionally. I'm just saying that some folks are just overly enthusiastic.
That's
Overly
true.
enthusiastic,
That's true.
So before we start, and I want to spend let's say half of our conversation on just the basics of NFTs. Maybe you can tell the audience a bit about yourself and your background, especially the latest stuff that you've been doing in, what is it, three theorems? I'm sorry, the company's
Theorem
name.
3.
Yeah,
Theorem 3
Theorem 3.
Advisors. So,
It's a very interesting name, Theorem 3. Yeah, advisor. But go ahead, tell the
sure.
audience who you are and what you do.
So basically, I am Chief Executive Officer and Chief Distiller of Theorem 3 at this point. And what I've done is taken probably the entirety of my career and turned it into one big sphere, and which is 360 degrees of marketing and media that's covered film, television, music, magazines, books, everything from commercial production all the way through to art. And within Theorem 3, what we work on is building out for companies and individuals with a, how would I put, a social impact piece. So everything has a social impact, a piece of care that we get involved in, whether we're giving back or we are developing a message, so we work with everything from green wine futures all the way through to literacy with companies such as JetBlue. But this takes me back to where I came from. And part of my business was really working with IP, intellectual product across the board, and licensing. So it really comes full circle when we start to look at NFTs and we start to look at what's happening in the market. And I think that's probably the most important, because so many times people don't take a full circle look at everything. And so they go automatically into the silo. Here it is. I have a, let's take the NFT. I have an NFT. Let's buy it. Let's make it. Let's buy it. Let's go. We're ready to go. And we're going to make a lot of money. Well, if we take it back a few steps, it's the same way somebody went out and said, I'm going to make an album. Or somebody went out and said, I'm going to make a podcast and I'm going to make a ton of money because I'm going to do very well. Or I'm going to make an album and I'm going to do very well. But there are other components to everything to making it a success, including in the book business. And I've spent a lot of time too in publishing and carrying from publishing on to other areas. And I think, and one other place that I cannot forget, because I worked in Web 1.0, launching in the gaming industry, and we launched IGN.com, one of the big gaming networks. So when you look at that and you look at who gets involved, it is very interesting to see what the audiences are and what we automatically think in our heads at home versus what we think, what really happens outside.
Yeah, wonderful. So in essence, what you're, just so that I can make sure I understand what you just said, you want to ensure that when somebody gets into a venture such as, I don't know, making a documentary or making a commercial or making an album, they're not going into it naively.
Yes.
Right? That they're going to it with, first of all, full knowledge of what that entails, but probably, again, I'm just trying to extrapolate, probably also making the most of what they have done and what they have.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. In fact, I could honestly say that whatever company that I have been in, okay, from my past, which I've now taken to the present, I always consider it looking at opportunities that create alternative revenue streams while taking care of the original product, the original intellectual property, and understanding how we disseminate that and do it the right way. You know, whether there is some kind of a caveat to it, whether it's, like I said, a piece of social impact, a piece of, you know, doing good somewhere, or just alone taking your product that is your intellectual property and turning it into something, but also watching for the scavengers, watching for the people that are out there that are saying, oh no, we'll make it big. And I can honestly say to you, there are examples that I can give you that shows where things shouldn't be done and how they shouldn't be done, and then why, you know, and this has been going on forever, okay? And we think just because NFT makes it official, that it is pristine. It's not, but it is also a new wonderful opportunity or a new vehicle for us to take a trip on. And also there is at least a little bit of proof of how we can, say, track with owning our product.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm proud of myself in the sense that I think I found the ideal person to speak with. You know, in the sense, in the sense that this is exactly the kind of, I think, thinking that anyone who wants to get involved into something this brand new should be you know, doing in their mind, or should be cautious, but also, so there's that balance between caution and daring, right? Making the most of the opportunities, but being careful. Okay, so let's start with the basics, since again our audience doesn't know much, just like me, about NFTs. What is an NFT as such? You know, what's the difference, let's say, between an NFT and, I don't know, cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin? What's the difference? Are they related?
You know, I guess I would really pick this up as NFT is a process. Okay. And it's a process of tagging what you have. So you have a piece of art, you have a piece, let's say you have a soundbite, you have a tweet, you have a anything that is your creative IP. So if you are a voiceover artist, you may have created some amazing sounds, and we'll get into that later, because there are pieces to this that I've been after in the music industry. So, but we consider the NFT a non-fungible token. Okay, so that non-fungible token is, everybody's thinking, okay, I've created this piece, this art, and now I can trade it around, or I can do something with it, or whatever. No. NFT is a process. So it's a process of attaching your IP to the blockchain. And that's an important piece to that, because that's where you look at, how would I consider it, sort of where it comes from. So there's a distinct serial number in the blockchain that attaches each time. And each time that that process is built, there's another piece to the puzzle. So, and if you hear a dog barking, I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. I like dogs. That's fine.
Because, but you know, she's my NFT. But I guess the one thing that we should know is we're using what do you call Ethereum or any type of cryptocurrency to work with buying, with minting the NFT, with paying. That is the way it's paid for. It's not paid for in dollars. So, you know, that's another piece to that puzzle. But your biggest part is that it is not it is just a process. So if we were to look at the words versus like non-fungible versus fungible, the key to fungible is that it's something you can do something with. So if I give you $10 and you give me 2 5s back, it's fungible. It's something that can become one into the other. An NFT can't. So that if I create a sound or I have a sound bite, that sound bite is mine and it's traceable. Nobody can hash it up unless I sell it to them as an NFT property that maybe I have made a special quote, or I have, a serial of podcasts that are on a process. Maybe it's an entrepreneurial process, and I want to share that. That is in my NFT realm. That has to be shared by my selling it on the market. Okay. So, so I would say the best thing to really think about is it's not a thing. It's a process, and the token is what comes out of that NFT. So it's your ability to own the token that is directed towards that IP.
Okay, makes sense. So you mentioned Ethereum, right? Ethereum is the blockchain, right, where most NFTs are minted.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Now, if let's say I've recorded 60 seconds of sound, right? I don't know, maybe it was raining and I recorded 60 seconds and I minted it as an NFT, and I called it Morning in McLean, Virginia. And I gave it the date, the location, and my name, and maybe even, let's say, this is the house address where this audio happened, right? And I created an NFT, okay? And I put it in the marketplace, let's say OpenSea, right?
Yes.
Or Rarible. Okay. And somebody, and I put it market for sale, and I said, okay, somebody wants to give me some Ethereum fraction, right? That is about $100. Let's say $100, right? I will sell it for you. And somebody says, yeah, I want to buy it, and they bid and they get it for $100, let's say. And now they own that NFT. Correct? Okay. Now the original audio that I minted, do I still own it myself, or is it now owned by somebody else?
It's owned by somebody else, but it's not necessarily. So you have the original piece. They have the token to the rights to the original piece. So you have that original, but what happens there is they have the rights to do it. Now they've bought it fully from you. Okay. They have the rights to market it on the secondary market. Maybe they want to, share it for an opportunity in, let's just say, Sounds of Washington, D.C. Okay. And now they want to sell it in the secondary market. What's key to that is you still make money, because you'll make money on the secondary market as well, because it's still a license in a certain way. It's kind of I always consider it an upside down license, but part of it is that you have the token, that person has the token. So let's say Joe Smith bought it. He has the token, and basically he can now do what he wants with your rain, in McLean, Virginia, but you're still going to make money in perpetuity. So, but it will be a smaller scale because you've sold it, and you'll still have a secondary license. So because of the traceability, it'll trace back to, now you started it, you made it, Joe Smith bought it. It will go on from there, I believe. And that's something that, it's kind of an up and down, because right now in the licensing industry, because I work in licensing as well, and basically that's sort of an offshoot of everything with IP. The contracts that we have to make now are completely different, because you have to include the NFT into the contracts. And there is always, some caveat somewhere, because as the market changes and it's not regulated, we have to see what we can do and what we don't do. But right now, intellectual property is in perpetuity.
Okay. And then I read and heard that I could also that exact same audio, I could mint another NFT of it. Is that true?
You could, with the change, you could mint, but it would have to probably be another original, or you could mint the NFT with a mini change, because, there's, in a way, it's like Picasso. If we were to take Picasso and we looked at all the different versions, the different versions would, there might be a tinge to it, but that's a variation. So there could be a variation to it. So you could take that same NFT, but you're going to add something to it, in a way, too, like patents.
Okay.
So there's nothing.
Go ahead.
There's nothing that changes that. It's really doing the variations. But I also believe that it depends on what the market is asking for. You might be wasting your time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's forget about me. Let's talk about, say, an artist, right? Who has an audience, who has a fan base, who cares about what the artist does. Let's take the example of comedians, because for some reason comedians have been the most interested constituency out there in audio NFTs. Aside from musicians are number one, and a comedian for some reason are number two, because what they do has to do with audio, obviously, right? So you listen to a comedian, and so let's take one of those, right? Let's say somebody has actually a name, not necessarily extra famous, but let's say they're on their way to becoming famous.
Yes.
Okay. Let's say they're young, they have an edge, and they're going somewhere clearly, and so they issue some NFTs. Let's say those NFTs are, I don't know, the first minute of their stand-up routine, whenever they go and give it. So in New York and DC and in Atlanta, right? So they record at first minute and they mint it. Okay. And because they have an audience that cares about them, they have an actual market, right? Of folks who believe that these folks, this comedian is going to be a star, even though they are now a minor star, maybe become a big star. And so they, I'm just trying to make sure that my reasoning and my thinking is correct. So let's say I'm a fan of such a person, and I buy one of their NFTs for $1,000, because I really believe that they'll be somewhere 5 years from now. Is that, first of all, is that the kind of things that people do with these NFTs? They buy them because it's an investment into somebody, some artist. If you're just focusing on artists for now, is it one of the?
It is in different groups. So like, if we were to take it from a generalized look at who's buying the NFTs at this point, you're looking at a huge audience, maybe of, and not huge, again, let's go back, maybe it's 15% or 10% millennial. Yeah. Okay. And then you have maybe 2% boomer, that's out there buying, because they're like, well, what is this? Maybe I'll test it, of the people that are more forward, in forward thinking. And you're going to have probably, a combination of others, maybe in the 7% space. So it's not a lot of people when you think about it, but yet you'll get these big booms of, oh my God, DJ so-and-so did this for so-and-so, and now they've made $70 million. Well, it's the same way that in the 1950s, you were discovered working in a restaurant to be the next beautiful face on the big screen. It really depends, but we churn sort of the market. So let's say this young comedian, I want to take a bet on them, and I buy, yes, it's for $1,000. That's your bet. Whether it happens or it happens, that's yours because you love them. And that brings me to also buying what you love. So if you love this comedian, that owning that is cool for you. You don't know where it will go. And if we go back to how many collectibles and all kinds of things that we've seen through the years, from looking at television and seeing the Bradford Exchange come out with plates that people collected like crazy that are worth zero, all the way through to, but they might love the Wizard of Oz, or they might love, country, they might love. So it just depends. And so you will be hoping, but it's not a get rich quick. And even if they have a platform, and this is key, you have to be able to leverage that platform so much that you're begging people to buy into it, and going to that platform and saying, hey, I have this NFT now, and it's, let's say the first time that whatever comedian, said, said their first words, on television or on, on a podcast or whatever, I have it. There may be somebody out there, but there also may not. And even though it is, let's say the audience is 10 million, which is, a nice size, break that down, that out of 500,000 people, maybe 5 will think about buying it. 5. So, but on the other side, people do have that imagination that there's this huge platform, and I've seen it. I've seen it in especially in publishing, where it's bought off a platform, like where people are like, oh my God, they're an amazing Instagram person, and they do so much, and they have 1 million followers, and they're going to buy 1 million books. Well, they're not. They're really not. Okay, because the followers have that person on Instagram, and the couple may buy the book, or maybe you'll get 10,000 buying the book out of a huge amount of followers, but you're still not seeing where's the continuity. There's no continuity after that.
Interesting.
And so that's something. It's your bet, but if you love that, it's the same way I kept the album of George Carlin, because I thought he was so hysterical when I was younger. And today his first press of the albums are worth, a decent, not crazy, but it's just the fact that it's a first press.
Yeah.
And so if you think of it that way, it's okay. But I think you have to love the product you buy. It's not a bet.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Would you say that it could be a way for someone to support the artist, right?
Yes.
In a concrete way, and get something out of it, maybe not, but that's not their primary motive. The primary motive is to be supportive, perhaps.
It's kind of being part of an exclusive club. I like it as part of an exclusive club. And if you are, a big fan, yes. I mean, I have an artist that I'm a big fan of, that I, make sure that I'm always buying, and, whether it's a print or it's whatever, it's keeping track, it's that type of thing, but it's because I am loyal to that artist. And so I believe that it's a wonderful way, that I don't have any qualms about. This is about being part of a group. And maybe you're in that club that each owns a piece of that, and that's fine.
Yeah. No, that's for me, that's the most attractive aspect of this is not you're trying to make quick money. Actually, you're playing the long game, and the long game is not necessarily about the NFT. It's about your relationship with the artist, or maybe an organization could maybe do the same thing, like you could issue NFTs to get the support from, I don't know, nonprofits and so forth. So for me, again, I'm in the process of trying to understand this. Every time I understand a little bit, some new things open up in my mind, right? It could be used to support something you care about.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there about it, using it to support in certain ways. I think that is sort of spot on, because I can see that too as actually a fundraising tool.
Fundraising tool, right?
Can be, yeah, it can be. And that could be wonderful, because it's also, again, it goes back to being traced back to the original. Yeah. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Now, like when somebody asks me, like in a nutshell, what makes NFTs exciting, right? I tell them, or makes them original. I'm sorry, original. I tell them the fact that at any given moment, really, you can see the history of what happened to that NFT, as opposed to, say, for example, a deed or to a house, right?
Yes.
Right. You have to really go. You have to make a lot of effort to go find out what happened, who owned it, when, and so on and so forth. Whereas in the NFT world, it's almost automatic, right? Because it's in the blockchain. Is that true?
Well, yeah, because you're able to trace everything. And so now you feel that it is more authentic also. So even if you took a piece, it's the same thing with, yes, with a deed. With a piece of art too, is that you're looking at the provenance. So even if it was something that, let's just pretend a piece of art was, let's say a wonderful artwork, a painting was reproduced. And it was reproduced into 10 prints. And we want to know who reproduced it. Was it like, the Xerox place down the block? Or was it somebody, very well known, like Pace Galleries? So what would happen there is that if the provenance went back to Pace, you knew they only did 10 prints, but it's much harder. It was much harder then. If we were able to trace it just like we do now in the blockchain, we would have a much more clear path to where everything comes from.
Yeah. And can we today, given a painting, let's say the Mona Lisa, right? We always go back to the Mona Lisa for the example, right? The Mona Lisa has been owned by many folks and institutions across centuries, right? Is there a place where one can go and see who owned it, when, for how long, and how much was it sold for whom, or like in the real world, or not?
In the real world, I guess you could look at it as being able to trace it back through working with the museums, from that kind of thing,
right.
Looking at finding where it was, but you also don't know. You don't know whether something dropped off by the wayside and it's become a copy. I mean, I can tell you that I belonged to a very well-known club at one time that had all these wonderful artworks that were all originals, but they needed to raise money, to redo that. And in order to do it, they had to create facsimiles and sell the real artwork. And so there's a lot of different ways it's passed through. Then there's other ways where, during the war, people snuck artwork out. So you can't always trace that. And you can't always say that that piece was got legally, because a good way of bringing your money out of different places was rolling it up as a piece of artwork and taking it with you. But in the capacity of this gives it a much more concrete path.
Understood.
There's trust, and I think trust is huge, especially in this big world, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so NFTs obviously, I think, originally came into being to deal with the digital world, right? Like, an image and so forth, and so how do we make things that are by nature fungible, like a series of ones and zeros which represent an image, or it may be, how do we make that unique? And so NFT is like a stamp against that says this is unique, this is fungible. And so even though you may have other copies of that audio somewhere, they are not the same as this particular audio that is now in the blockchain, that is pointed to from the blockchain to some storage and so on and so forth, right? So it's a way to make things fungible in the digital world. So my question to you is there a way to use NFTs in the physical real world, right? Say, for example, can we NFT a painting? Can we NFT, I don't know, this thing here, which is my Spider-Man doll.
You can NFT anything in a certain way, with your own sort of twist to it. So yes, you can take a painting. Maybe you bought something that you like, and you can take that and maybe put it with something else, or you can just have that. That's you own it. You've purchased it. you can make an NFT of it because you own the physical. So the physical, now you can make an NFT and say, I have of Spider-Man, I've got him, and I photographed him in different places. Okay. And today Spider-Man is in McLean. So that is your rendition. And so now you can put that on the sort of on the market.
Got it. Got it. And it would be pointing to this object here, this specific object, meaning when somebody says, I want to buy it, I would sell them the NFT to it and send them the thing, obviously. And now they have a deed to it, so to speak, in the blockchain. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's because then you have your, it's like the chain of ownership. They would have the chain of ownership, it would go to them. So it would be theirs, but it would be a creation of yours. So now they've got that chain of ownership, and they've got, I have Spider-Man and McLean, and somebody else, and now you've minted, you want to mint it. I want him by the Capitol. So I'm going to bring him to the Capitol, and now they know you're minting that. And also there's something to know about this. That's the tough part, is because you spend all this money on minting and you don't know if they're going to buy it, so how do you handle that? And where do you go with that? So you have to be very careful. But if it's something that is in high demand, let's say you did buy the Mona Lisa, and now you have the official opportunity to make an NFT of it, and you're going to. And now you're making money hand over fist, because people are wanting to at least have that first run of, of the Mona Lisa. And maybe that person then sells on the secondary market. So that's the opportunity. So again, it's the value, I'll always say, is in the beholder. The value is in the person that is also a fan at the same time. And, that's how you can look at the NFT. But the best part is it's traceable now. Now we know where it comes from, and the contracts, like this falls into also then a smart contract, so that you're able to know exactly where everything is, what gets paid out, where it goes, and how it goes.
Which is something that like you were saying, right, is not guaranteed in the real world, right? Being able to know exactly when it started, and then who owned it when, and so forth. And I think that's a massive plus, right? This traceability, right?
Very much so.
That's hugely a step forward, in my opinion. And it's all happening without, the thing is, it's all happening without a, let's say, a central authority as such, like no one entity. There's the blockchain, which is in essence basically software in the cloud. And people are minting against it. And so there's no one entity that is arbitrator, right? It's the whole blockchain. So now, just so that people understand that minting is not just, it's not free, right? Right? There is, right? There are these, they're called gas fees, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about that a little bit. Why do they exist, and then what kind of cost do they entail? Like, what's the range?
So basically, the gas fees are kind of a fee of admittance in a way. I kind of look at it as a fee of building, and then admittance into sort of the log of the interplanetary system, and that's how they look at it. And so basically, if you're taking let's say you want to mint an NFT, and you're minting that NFT of Spider-Man. Okay. So basically you are doing the very same thing that you would have done 20 years ago, maybe, but in a different manner. Okay. So you get your wallet, you get your, currency, your Bitcoin or your cryptocurrency, majority Ether, so right now it's so, and then, so the Ethereum is in your wallet now so that you can pay for your gas fees. Okay. And you upload it to the marketplace on whatever platform you're going for.
Yeah.
And that's something too that, is kind of interesting, because it's expensive, because let's say now you're doing this and you need gas fees. Gas fees can run anywhere from 200, so it could be $70 to $200, depending on what you're doing and what the complexity is of how you're bringing it into the market and what the platform is. So,
Yeah.
so that's one thing. So now you've got your file, you're uploading your file, and in this capacity, you're uploading it into that interplanetary system. And what is interesting is maybe 10 years ago, we'd be uploading it FTP, file transfer protocol, where you're just uploading a PDF and getting it all ready. And then, right now it's completely different because we've added interplanetary. So and from once you've done that and you've clicked create within that that area, you're minting. And so it's taking time, whether it is a complex piece or it is a simple piece. It just depends. So the gas fees they'll range probably about $70 to $200 depending. Maybe even more at certain times, but an average, if we were going to go with an average. But the other thing is there's another way of doing it. There's a way, it's called lazy minting. And so lazy minting is different. So lazy minting is you take a picture of your Spider-Man, okay? And you say, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to put it up on the market. And basically you put it up on the market, and you would maybe do it through like Rarible or one of those, and they offer where you can put it up, and then if there are people interested, then you can mint. Because not everybody can afford to mint. And again, this goes back to, let's go all the way back to pressing a vinyl record, a CD, making a book, doing all those sorts of things. It's expensive. And not everyone, and that's why independent authors in the past and independent musicians and everybody in the past has not been able to do anything. But now it allows us to become soloists. We are able to become soloists in a couple of ways, with either doing the lazy minting, or if we have, some extra cash along the side that we want to try 5 things or 1 thing or 2, we can.
Okay.
So
that's great.
It gives us more.
Okay. So for example, let's go back to our comedian, our young comedian, right, who is going somewhere, but they don't have much cash now, right? Like all artists.
Right? No, that's absolutely true.
Let's say they don't have a lot of cash, but they have a following, and the following is not yet necessarily familiar with NFTs, and so maybe it will take time. And they say, well, I'm gonna start this thing about the first minute in any city. I'm gonna record. I'm going to go and put them in the marketplace, and so that at some point somebody will decide to buy. At which point then I'll mint. Is that what you said for the lazy? Right? I'll wait for the demand. At which point?
Yeah, they wait for the demand. Yeah.
Okay. And so for them it makes sense in that sense, because they could make the offerings and then make them available for their followers to show interest in them, right?
Yeah, and what would happen is the follower then, so if you were minting it, so through a different platform, you're paying for the minting. If you're lazy minting, you're waiting for it's kind of included in the buyer's fee, so the buyer is paying for you. So, because also you can look at it as percentages. Sometimes when they look at minting, your percentage fee on the sale is like, 2.5%. And so instead the buyer is paying that. So it's an easier way because you are new, but you think you have a follower and you're like, hey, everybody out there, support me. This is my first time. Or I am minting my comedy from when I was 12.
Yeah.
And people will then look at it and say, wow, I wonder what he was like when he was 12, and I'll be able to own that piece. So you might own all the years of you as a comedian all the way through. Now you're creating a worth because it's a pattern of, and if you make it, or even if that person just likes you, they're like, you got to listen to this. Eventually somewhere it'll go on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I were unscrupulous, I would probably I'll edit this out just so that we don't give ideas to folks out there. But if I were unscrupulous, I would target expecting moms, because all moms believe that their child is going to be a superstar. And I'll tell them, you need to mint an NFT of their first cry, right?
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And what mom is not going to buy it because they're like, I know my child is going to be somebody very, very important, right? Again, if I was in scruples, I would do that. But I think it's an idea, no? That
Actually, it's a fun idea, but it's a fun idea for the mom, for herself.
For herself.
Meaning she mints it for herself. It's kind of like when you have the baby's footprints, when you have the, all those kinds of things are wonderful. Like I have cassettes of me doing the news when I was 5. Okay. So
wow.
when I think about things like that, I say to myself, okay, it's very funny because I'll, my brother and I'll listen back on it and say, oh my God, we sounded like that, really? So
I know what you mean. I have cassettes too.
Yes, but that's the piece. So yes, it can become something wonderful like that, developing the baby's first cry, doing that as a collectible for a mom,
For a mom, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And to give to the grandparents.
Yes. The the grandparents who will be today's what do you call the latest Generation Z, right? Generation Z, right?
I think
what are we right now? Or we're past?
We're in Z. I think we're in Z now. We've run out of everything.
Or digitals? Are they called the digitals? Let's call them the digitals, right?
Yes.
So these are the folks who they live in their smartphone, like actually almost all
I
of
do
us.
too.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't want to point a finger. I have a son who is 20. Wow. Yeah, 20, and he lives in that world. I think much more than I do. And I'm not judging anyone, right? It's a new generation. But for those folks where digital is very meaningful, right? An NFT for their child might make sense, right? The metaverse,
it would be beautiful. Actually, it would be really nice. It would be very nice.
And if they can, if they can make an NFT, like several copies of the NFT, and the child does become somebody, right? That child now has property that they can sell if they want.
That's right. That's very true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's kind of like buying a share of Disney stock,
And it becomes something 20, 30 years later, right? Because of that person has become somebody, and now they have like a certificate that their mom or their parents created for them, which happens to be the NFT of them, the first cry. So like, for example, I don't know, maybe somebody would pay a lot of money today if there was an NFT of give me an actor like DiCaprio, right? Leonardo DiCaprio's first cry. I guarantee you that would pull millions of dollars.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay, so here we go. Now so as you can see, like, I'm an example of somebody who's getting excited about NFTs. As a professional, how would you, now I want to pull in your work, right? How would you calm me down and say, okay, let's have a strategy here. It looks like you want to create this product and so on and so forth, and you want to create NFTs for folks. How would you advise me? I don't want to get free advice, obviously. Just want to get paid.
How would I advise you? I would say to you, first of all, is be aware of the market that you're going into.
Yeah.
Understand that you're going in because you love what you're doing and that you're going to produce something, but don't feel that you are going to automatically, the minute you produce that NFT, everybody's going to come running. There's a very important thing to say, because let's say your work is, you do have an audience and you might be building. They're not going to run because there are so many components to the NFT, as in marketing. It's no one knows what you have in your closet unless you open the closet and let them see in the closet. And that's one of the key pieces. But also watch out, for scams in the market. Watch out for people that are trying to get you to create your NFT, and they are offering you, oh my God, you're going to make here's one of my favorites. You will make, yes, you're going to make all the royalties in perpetuity. Fabulous. You're going to make all the royalties in perpetuity. Just work with us. We'll get you in our wallet, we'll put you up there. But what you don't know is they're not going to market you. They're not, I want you to close your eyes right now and tell me, what book do you see on Amazon? Okay. Or what pot or pan do you see? You don't, because it's so big, right? So you have to look for the curation and look for where there's opportunity for you. So when somebody says, yes, okay, we can do it and we'll get it out there, pay for the marketing. No, because it's what you put into it. And I say this to artists, I say this to authors, I say this to musicians, I say this to anybody who has IP, including inventors. And I've worked with inventors where people have come in and said, where I have to take it from there, where people have come in to me and said, well, I paid all this money for these diagrams. I said, why? Why? Because no one's seeing them and they didn't tell you where you need to take them, and someone's already changed this diagram now and it's a new patent, somewhere else. So that's what you have to understand is really go in it with eyes wide open, go in it because you love it, create it because you love it, and then understand that there is a marketing plan that needs to be put in place. You need to know that you are getting out there with some, or that you have this wonderful social media following that's going to just push it out the door and say, hey, get this, and he's offering it for, 1 cent today. Okay. 1 cent. And, so that's the thing. It's really, to beware, because when you do start to look at it, everybody's preying upon something. There are everybody from hackers to, crazy, what do you call fake tech supports to, you name it. You need to be with that person. You need to be able to say to that person, no, this is really the thing. But if you don't agree with me and you want to go with them, I cannot stop you. But go in with your eyes wide open.
Well, I think the bottom line, there is no such thing as a quick buck in this world, right? Never. The metaverse and all NFTs and cryptocurrency is not like a solution that humanity has finally gotten, which is getting something for nothing. It just doesn't work that way. The real world. The real world, it's not like a real world 3.0, where now we can make money without doing anything. And I saw that. I remember there was some of this in the late 90s with the internet, where there was some of this vibe of we make money with the silliest ideas, right? Do you remember that, where there was all these crazy schemes, business 2.0, blah blah blah, and then
everything. Or how about, on television they used to have people that would say, you can make tons of money buying real estate, this way. I had no money and I bought all this real estate. Well, how that money was made by the person that, you see him flying around in a jet, he made it on the books that the people bought and the tapes and the CDs that they bought to learn how to buy and sell the real estate, and then found out they weren't going to really be able to do that. so that's how the money was made.
It's like a one-step Ponzi scheme, right? It's like a very flat Ponzi scheme. For me, it's like there are some fundamentals in the real world, the 3D in reality, which is it's very hard to make money. You have to work hard for it. And in this case, it may be easy to mint the NFT, but then who knows that your NFT exists if you don't market it, and if you don't do all the work, if you don't maintain your audience, like you're saying, right? All that is the actual work that needs to be done. And so folks think that NFT has introduced a new phase in the history of humanity. And so the thing is that I find very interesting about you is that you're coming into the NFTs with all this background, and you're treating the NFTs as a process, but it's also a product in a way, right? I own this, right? And this thing needs to live within an ecosystem, right? So walk us through that particular, kind of sophistication that you bring into a conversation with, let's say, with an artist who comes in and they have an album, right? And they want to be successful with the album. The NFT, you tell them, is part of the deal, right? It's just a tool, right? What else do what else would you do with, say, a big brand artist who comes to you and says, okay, help me out here. I need to make sure that I'm making the most of what I have. And then I have a strategy moving forward in my marketing.
Okay. I think what we would look at is what do they have already? What have they done in the past? What has anything gone to NFT? And let's pretend this is their first time making that foray. So they have their traditional stuff. Let their traditional stuff keep going. But now let's look back and find what they have and unearth it from whether it's archives or whether it's, you know, a song that they haven't brought out. So within that, you can create sort of the NFT album that comes with extra, that comes with you sitting at the, you know, piano or sitting, you know, in the recording studio and saying, this is terrible, I don't like this. Or it's kind of like outtakes, you know, when you start to look at things like that, when you see that, you know, in after a movie or whatever, or after a show. But what it allows is, what are the additional things that are going to make this of value? So even though I have my album out on the market already, I'm, you know, it's being downloaded, I want to do this NFT with this, with added. And this is something that is done consistently throughout the years. So if we were to take looks at the music catalog, at comedians' catalogs, at publishing, art, the backlist or the back catalog sells over and over again. The new piece is just a lead to the back catalog, or it's also an intro to what's on that backlist. So if we were looking, you know, I suddenly discovered today, let's pretend, Stephen King, that I never read him, and I was a mystery reader and I wanted to read and thrillers and everything, but I never did. I'm testing this new book, and now what it is showing me is that there's a backlist of all of these books, and now I all of a sudden am now an avid reader. So what I say is that there's opportunity for alternative revenue streams across the board when it comes to this. And but you must remember that everything comes from one foundation, and that's you. And you have to see where all of the pieces come out of. And if we go back even further, just because we're using the word, you know, non-fungible token and you know, all that kind of stuff, is we also start to think about, you know, is it just a new name? Because right now, my email box is filled. Okay, I'm embarrassed to say, because yes, I go through, I read a lot of things, blah, blah, blah. It's like 200,000 emails in there, you know, but yes, they're open to you, you know. But why? Because think about your regular mailbox. When you used to go out and get mail, that's mail. We put an E in front of it. And now all of a sudden we have this new thing called email. Now we go further. We're not opening our email. We're opening our text. Now everybody's asking us, can we send you a text? Now you have too many texts, so you're not looking at them and you're not seeing what's always going through. So it's what we keep doing is adding these new pieces in front and just creating this wider track that becomes a sort of a digital plane. You know, that's the reality. And by changing the name, you know, to this new world out there, 20 years from now, there's going to be another thing. 5 years from now, there'll be another thing. But I do feel that people should be aware of this. They should know about it. They should read about it, and they should be well, you know, entrenched in it in a certain way, because it is part of our lives, and it will become part, and everybody will be like, oh, you know, maybe 10 years from now, NFT, yeah, you know, I have, you know, wallets full of them, but that was Ether. I don't know, you know, Ethereum was such a, I don't remember it. You know, we have now, you know, whatever. And that will change because everybody is manufacturing but we're also worried too about the carbon output.
Yeah.
So we don't know where we're going with this yet. And I think that's a big piece, but it is still something, you know, that's, I find important to know. And it's a very cool piece of sort of life. In audio, but with this part, this is a very important part for me to say to you on music, is that years ago, how record companies and how we always had to keep track of sampling. So if you got, if a chunk of money could be made off of going after people who sampled your work. Now that you're on NFT, you have this chain. So let's say the artist had a specific thing, ba-boom, boom, ba-boom, boom, that's his beat, ba-boom, boom. And they NFT'd that. And you find somebody else is playing ba-boom, boom within theirs without the chain of command. Now you have something.
Yeah.
So, you know, as time went on, no one could track what was on the radio or hear the sampling. You spent your time listening to say, oh, I just heard ba-bum bum. Okay, see if you can hear that song again. I heard it. Well, that belongs to, let's say, you know, so-and-so band. Well, we have to go after them and charge them. And then we were able to do it, you know, via other softwares. But NFT allows you to prove the ownership. And that's one key thing in audio. You can prove that. And you can say that ba-bum bum is mine. And let me show you why. And let me show you when it was created. And that's an important piece to the person who's working in audio, whether it is just even a sound, you know, that they may create or they may use at the end of their podcast that they want to do, and somebody else copies it, they have something.
Yeah. Like that, I think there was a sports guy, or I don't know, wrestling or boxing, and say, let's rumble, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that was his thing, and then somebody started using it, and he sued that person, and he won actually. So that's interesting, right? Because that could have been an NFT easily, right? It's mine.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, and here's the timestamp and so forth. In any case, the possibilities are endless. I think the key thing I'm taking away is to be careful, to be educated, to understand that change is fast, and it's always there, right? Things are always changing, and also that there is no such thing as free money in this world.
No, there isn't. But you know, that's the thing. It's just being creative with it, and even looking and being creative. Because one other thing you could do with your NFTs is also create like what I look at is a digital access pass, so that you know, maybe your NFT gives you the special opportunity to, you know, not only are you collecting pieces of, you know, this podcast, or, you know, maybe even the voiceovers of a specific voiceover artist. Yeah, you may get the chance for that NFT to do a roundtable, you know, that is a digital access pass that gets you in, you know, and eventually I think we're going to start to see things like this, you know, offered, whether it's Broadway or it's, you know, ball games, anything is getting that NFT to walk right through, rather than even having scalpers outside, you know. So it's going to change. Yeah. So that's another piece.
Yeah, I think once we go over, because right now the brand of NFTs in terms of the mainstream, it's a scam. It's right. It's, you know, they associated with these crazy GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call them, right? So there's a lot of, but I think once it becomes once it's taken seriously, which I think there's too much value for it not to go away. I think there's too much value.
Absolutely.
I think once it gets into like folks start taking it seriously, I think that's where we'll see a lot of creativity and like value becoming very concrete, right? And so I think that's where a lot of innovation happens. Right now, I think we're still in that initial phase where people are very skeptical about it. Some people are making money, but that's like always with anything, right? There's a small portion, very tiny portion of people who are making a lot of money, and folks are trying to emulate them in a mistaken notion that you know, there is such a thing as easy and quick money. But I think there's a future here. Well, I think it will be interesting to see how it evolves, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I think we will also start to see regulation come in a little, you know, just to make sure, because we face, you know, everything from money laundering all the way through to, you know, just intellectual property management. This is an opportunity to level the playing field in that way by tracing everything back to the original owner, and also being able to own yourself, whether you're selling it or not, but you're creating this property that might be that will be your legacy.
Yeah.
And it's NFT'd, so we know the traceability of it. So, 100 years from now, maybe somebody looks back at it and says, this is the time capsule. So I also look at it as the time capsule, because you're able to trace back, rather than us digging out of like the ground, a brick and a book and a thing. It's a lot of work. You have to figure it all out.
Yeah.
But in the capacity of NFT, you're going to trace it all the way back, and you're going to say, wow, this was created here. This is who created it. This is why, this is, it gives you much more to work with. But I believe that NFT can also can be paired with what we have today as a value add and an extra. And there's a complete opportunity with that as well.
Wonderful. Well, Sumya Ojakli, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For taking the time. This has been very informative. And it's good to see like real folks out there who have a lot of experience in the real world, like do real things with NFTs and share their perspective. Again, thank you so much, Sumya.
Happy to be here, and happy to have spoken with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.